so I decided to make a quick list. And this list, as you can tell from the title, is 13 great horror films currently streaming on Shudder in October of 2020. Now, first off, if you want more awesome content like this and stuff about Blu-rays and cult movies and stuff of that sort, or you just like this face right here, not a lot of people do, but some have expressed interest, then go ahead and subscribe down below. Click that subscribe button, maybe punch that like, smack the fuck out of that bell, do whatever you gotta do, and maybe if you really enjoy this content, check me out on the Patreon. All that's linked down below. I don't know what's happening to my voice. I'm becoming Dana Carvey right now. So oh boy, I just got high on life. I don't know where I snorted that up. Anyway, 13 great films. So it's hard to put together like a 13 best films on Shudder list. Shudder has roughly 350 movies on their or in their catalog. It's not exactly that much, but it's hard to tell just because you got like short films, you got collections, stuff like that, but roughly 350, over 300 movies. That's the main thing. They have a fuckload of movies on their service, predominantly horror, some genre, you got your revenge movies, you've got some action stuff, but just a huge catalog, and most of it really fucking good. So instead of doing a best of list, I thought let's do just 13 movies that I personally recommend. These are just movies that I've personally watched, that I enjoyed, that I think you might enjoy too. Some of them are really notable films, some of them are super famous, some of them are super obscure, some of them you might not have heard of, some of them you almost certainly have. But either which way, I think you might find at least one movie on this list that makes you go, hey, I should watch that. So, without further ado, let's just dig in, and in no particular order, just 13 movies that I think you, friend to friend, because we're friends, you and me, friend to friend, you should watch. First up, if you're looking to fill that 1960s spot on your 61 Days of Halloween list, perfect movie for you, The Mask of the Red Death. Directed by Roger Corman, starring Vincent Price, Mask of the Red Death is a really smart way to extend the story that Edgar Allan Poe wrote. Of course, The Mask of the Red Death, not a very long story. It is a very short story. Not terribly complicated. It's just this prince, he's a dick to everybody, holds a huge party in his fucking castle while all the peasants are off dying, and then, wouldn't you know it, this red-cloaked motherfucker just walks in and he's like, yo, Prince Prospero, what up? And then awful horror befalls him. And it's a great story. It's one of my favorite Edgar Allan Poe stories. And Roger Corman really pulled this one together. Like, it is phenomenal. It helps that they have the sets from Beckett left over to use, so it looks really grand, has a beautiful, super wide aspect ratio. It looks very regal. The colors are very lush. There's several sequences where the camera's like Dutch angling quite a bit. You very much feel that 60s, kind of that swinging 60s feel. Just a brilliant film. Vincent Price is great as the super evil Prince Prospero, and they up the evil a bit. In this one, he's a straight up like old school Satanist. Double chef's kiss. Oh my goodness. Angel got its wings. So if you like Vincent Price and you just like evil motherfuckers getting their comeuppance, boom, watch this. Also, really smart of adding the peasant girl to it. I think that's such a great thing. Like, the original story really doesn't have a character to guide you through that well. It's just telling the story of Prospero. And in this case, we get this village girl, we get her dad, we get her lover, and their story really helps us to understand better not only the plight of this unnamed country, but also to give a better insight into just how evil a motherfucker this guy is. So, highly recommend The Mask of the Red Death. Really fun stuff. Next up on the list, let's go completely different. This one's a bit newer, but old-fashioned nonetheless. WNUF Halloween Special. Now, WNUF Halloween Special, this was basically a callback to the television of the 80s. And these like little independently owned news channels doing these kind of stunt news stories. And interspersed, of course, you have all those commercials that are just so very, very, very corny. It's all very, local TV of the 80s. Basically, the story follows this news crew for WNUF who are exploring this supposedly haunted house in this town, and well, things go somewhat awry. And while things are going awry, we get tons of commercials, maybe too many commercials. I'm going to be straightforward with you. Bit too many commercials. This movie's like maybe 10 minutes too long. But a bunch of fun commercials for all kinds of weird little small businesses and politics, local politics, which is the best kind of politics. I think my personal favorite is The Quarry. It's I think the rock and roll station or something, but they call it The Quarry, and I just thought that was the greatest gag. But it has a really fun ending. I wouldn't say that it is the most like, oh my god, holy shit, found footage movie you're going to see anytime soon, but it really commits to its gimmick. I'm a big fan of things that commit to their gimmick. If you know my movies, you know I really like committing to the gimmick. So highly recommend WNF Special. It does have its flaws, and it's probably the worst film on this list, but it is also almost certainly the most unique as well. So check that out. Next up, Color Out of Space. So this was a 2019 film from the one and only Richard Stanley. Now, Richard Stanley, if you don't know, he directed Dust Devil, he directed Hardware. He was an absolute wunderkind of South African filmmaking, and unfortunately, things went a little iffy in his career. He got hired to direct The Island of Dr. Moreau, starring Marlon Brando and Val Kilmer, and that, oh boy, that was a story. A story so crazy that it got its own documentary, which is also, I believe, available on Shudder. So secondary ping there. But Color Out of Space is his big return to actual horror narrative filmmaking, and holy balls, he fucking knocks it out of the park. This movie's not going to be for everybody. It does star Nicolas Cage, and he does put in a very Nicolas Cage performance, going so far as to use his vampire's kiss accent for a rather large chunk of the film. And while I personally really like that touch, and I like that Richard Stanley apparently was the one to suggest it, I can understand why some people might not be big fans of this particular film. That said, it is visually super exciting. It's probably the closest to a legitimate, like, one-to-one adaptation of a Lovecraft story that I've seen that wasn't like a H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society production. Like, it's one that, yes, it's a modern day adaptation, yes, he adds things to it, but it feels like a Lovecraft story, and I really, really respect that, and it gets the whole cosmic vibe down right. Out of all the adaptations of Lovecraft's work, I mean, you know, like maybe like Reanimator would be one of the top ones, but as far as his cosmic stuff, this tops the list for me. This is one of my absolute favorite adaptations I've seen. I cannot recommend it highly enough. I love Color Out of Space, and I think you might as well if you love cosmic horror and you appreciate that vampire's kiss accent. Next up, Daniel Isn't Real. Now, Daniel Isn't Real, this one is one that, if there's one movie on this list that could be singled out just for blowing my mind, well, it would be one that's actually further down this list. But if there was one that if there was a second film that you could single out for just blowing my brains all over the wall with holy fuckery, then it would be Daniel Isn't Real. Daniel Isn't Real, it's this story of an evil imaginary friend. Basically, if you just want to see Arnold Schwarzenegger's needlessly attractive son just mind fucking that really sweet stoner boyfriend from Halloween, then this is for you, man. This is another double. Let's one more. Mwah! Angel gets its wings. Love it. You want a movie that's gonna bend your brain in uncomfortable directions? Daniel Isn't Real. Check it out, man. Or girl. Or woman. Or person. Next up, Bliss. Bliss is kind of a throwback to that sort of experimental, semi-pretentious urban vampire story from like the late 80s, early 90s. If you remember like Night Owl, which was released by Vinegar Syndrome, The Addiction by Abel Ferreira, Blood and Donuts is a great one. Movies like that, that's kind of the kind of movie that you're getting here, but updated with a more modern context. Joe Bagos does a phenomenal job here. I wasn't really, this is one of those where I wasn't sure what to expect, and then I watched it, and it was tough to get into at first. There's a lot of unlikable characters. There's a lot of just very LA shit that I'm not into, but it all leads to a conclusion that is batshit wild, very gory. There's some incredible special effects here, and the camera work in the final like 15-20 minutes is absolutely just breathtaking. I love the last chunk of this film. The first few chunks are good. I'm not, it's not bad. It's just there are some frustrating elements to it, but what it all leads to is totally worth it. So let's move on to something that's also a little uneven, but I still very much recommend, and that is Nightmare Cinema. So Nightmare Cinema, this is one, basically Mick Garris wanted to make an anthology movie, and anthology movies are tough. You don't get a lot of very good anthology movies nowadays. They tend to be kind of shitty. So sprinkle me surprised when I put in a Mick Garris produced, Mickey Rourke starring anthology, and I actually really enjoy myself. I say put in, like I didn't just click a button to watch it on show. Anyway, this is one of those movies that, I mean, it is uneven, as I said. There are a few stories in it that don't work, and honestly, the worst thing about it is also the most expensive. Mickey Rourke, he's not very good in this. He's obviously phoning it in. He's not necessarily awful or anything. It's obvious that he just wanted a paycheck and a cool coat, and then fuck y'all, I'm out. So he's definitely the least of it. But I really like the hook. I like the wraparound story quite a bit, and most of the stories themselves are a lot of fun. They mix things up a bit. There are definitely some that are kind of weak. There's also some that are super strong, and I think the best part is it's a wide range. None of the stories really feel like the others. It's different styles, different filmmakers, and all the filmmakers are definitely giving it their all. And I think that you might even find some that you could watch with your friends, and they're gonna love one story that you're gonna hate, and vice versa. It's kind of like a box of candies, and all the candies are different horror stories. And it's like, I don't like the caramel. Well, I love the caramel. Give me more caramel. I don't know where I'm going with this. Let's move on. Next up, this one is probably the one you're least likely to have seen. It's called Deep Murder, and Deep Murder is basically a feature-length Adult Swim sketch. It is a parody of porn parodies that's also parodying murder mysteries. It's weird. It's a weird film. It is a film that I was uncertain of at first. I started watching it, and it was sort of I don't even know why I started watching it. I think someone mentioned it somewhere, and I was like, sure, I'll try it out. Why not? I can bitch about it later. And then by the time it was done, I was having the time of my life. It starts off in a way that you really have to just wait and acclimate to it. It's one of those movies where if you don't just allow it to have its way with you, you're gonna have a bad time. But if you can accept what it's doing and you can really dig the gimmick, oh man, it is fantastic. I really, really enjoyed it. Obviously, it's on this list. I don't know why I keep saying I enjoyed these things. They're all highly recommended. Come on. Next up on the list, Maniac Cop. Maniac Cop is, it's Maniac Cop. This is probably, let's see, on my list, this is probably the one that most of you have seen, I would say, probably. So Maniac Cop, William Lustig directed, Larry Cohen written. That right there is a recipe for gold. So it's basically it's a classic, somehow still prescient tale of an undead cop terrorizing New York and the panic that causes. I love this film. I love its two sequels, and those are both available also on Shudder. So you can go out and you can just have yourself a Robert Z'Dar marathon of all three Maniac Cops and have yourself a fucking great time. You also got you got Tom Atkins, you got Bruce Campbell, you got Richard Roundtree, you got William Smith, you got all these great actors in this film. Plus, of course, the aforementioned Robert Z'Dar and his chin starring as the titular Maniac Cop. And I just, it's one of those movies, it was one of the first, maybe even the first William Lustig movie I saw. And I fell in love with that guy's fucking career afterward. Maniac Cop is a flawed film, but it's a lot of fun. Great bit of New York nonsense, some really cool kills, great stalking sequences, and it's socially relevant somehow. So check it out. Now this next one, if you've watched The Last Drive-In, you've seen this movie probably. It was the subject of what I consider the best episode of Joe Bob Briggs' show, period, and that is One Cut of the Dead. So this is one that I kind of have to mention. It's one of those that If I don't mention it, then my wife will punch me in the fucking balls because it's so fucking great. Every time I show it to someone, they're always a little trepidatious at first because it's a film that starts off and you're like, I don't know that this is actually something that I want to watch. This kind of sucks. And then it reaches a point and you're like, oh my fuck, holy shit, I love this movie. Why am I spiking my microphone? It's one of those films that I really can't spoil it for you. Like I physically cannot. If I started to spoil it for you, my heart would tear itself out of my chest. It would rip my ribcage open, hop out, give me the middle finger and run off and just leave me dying. That's how much I cannot spoil this for you. And I don't want you to spoil it for yourself. If somehow you have not watched One Cut of the Dead yet, or you started watching it and you stopped because you didn't like what you were seeing, trust me, go back, watch the movie, allow yourself to just be caught up in it. If you don't like the first 10 minutes, don't worry. Just don't worry. It'll come around. That's all I'm going to say. It'll come around and you will not regret it. If you do, we have very different tastes in cinema to an aggressive extent because I've shown it to my normie friends and they loved it. I've shown it to people who were more into weirdo bullshit and they loved it. I have never physically met anyone who did not love this movie. So check One Cut of the Dead out right. Pause the fucking video. I don't care. I've probably already gotten my ad revenue. Fucking go check it out, man. Up next, we're 10 in. Wow. Tenebrae. I had to put a Dario Argento film on this list, and of course Tenebrae is my favorite giallo from one of the absolute masters of the giallo film. And it's great. It stars the late John Saxon. Well, it co-stars the late John Saxon, and features some of the truly greatest deaths ever filmed on screen, including one that was absolutely like how you sometimes you'll see a clip of a movie and it becomes one of those sought after things where you just have to find that clip. I had that happen. There's a bit in this film with an arm spraying blood across a wall. And I saw it it was like someone had made a music video about horror movies or using horror movies on YouTube to a Pixies song. And for some reason I can't think of the name. And that shot was in there several times. And I was like, I have to know what fucking movie this is. And I finally found it when I watched Tenebrae and was shocked that it occurred. And the film itself, it's a Dario Argento giallo. He tried to go for a slightly less stylized approach, lighting-wise, and there's a lot of weird touches. It's very meta. It's about a writer of basically giallo books, and there's a lot of winks and nods, but done in a very smart way. And yeah, it also has just a really fun twist to it. So definitely check out Tenebrae. You could also check out Phenomena or any other Dario Argento films on Shudder, and I'm sure you'll be pleased. But anyway, number 11, The Strange Vice of Mrs. Ward. This is a Sergio Martino giallo film. Sergio Martino is actually his first giallo film. And Sergio Martino, he was kind of a Swiss Army knife of Italian directors. He did all kinds of shit. He did westerns, he did action, he did some drama, he did all kinds of stuff. And they weren't always great, but generally he always made entertaining films. American Rickshaw is a great example of a film that is technically not very good, but is very entertaining. And this is a film from a period in his career where he was just making fucking hit after hit. And yeah, it stars Edwige Fenech and George Hilton, who are just pure sex on screen. A lot of it is just Edwige Fenech going crazy, and that's fun. She was great at that. She was basically great at showing her tits and going crazy. And a bunch of other things, but that was the famous stuff. And I love not only Sergio Martino's films, but also this film in particular. You could watch any of Sergio Martino's gialli. There's not a lot of them, but this is as good a place to start as any, and it is available on Shudder, so check it out. It's pure 70s sleaze gold. At number 12, second to last. All right, here we go. Deadly Games, a.k.a. Dial Code Santa Claus. This one is going to be available on 4K UHD from Vinegar Syndrome. It's currently available for pre-order, so this is a great opportunity for you to check out the film beforehand. I can understand how that might be a bit of a pricey buy for you. So if you're considering that UHD because you haven't watched this movie before, go over to Shudder, fall in love with it, and go purchase that sucker because I guarantee you will have yourself a good time. I love Dial Code Santa Claus. It is, again, it's called Deadly Games on Shudder, and it is this brilliant French kind of killer Santa Claus, Home Alone, R-rated extravaganza. It is wild. They use models for this huge mansion. There's tons of violence, very quirky characters. I mean, there's all kinds of just positives to lob at you from this film. It is a stylish film. It is extremely well made. It is, if you wanted more like budgeted films from Vinegar Syndrome, this is a great one. And honestly, this is my favorite Christmas movie. So if that's anything to go by, if that gets your goat, Michael Keane's favorite Christmas movie, Dial Code Santa Claus, aka Deadly Games, on Shudder and available soon from Vinegar Syndrome on 4K UHD. Check it out, man. And finally, last one on this quick list. I say quick, I feel like I've been doing this for an hour. Last one on this quick list, Knife and Heart. So Knife and Heart, this is another French film. I don't know why I have so many French movies on this list. But anyway, Knife and Heart is one of, like, I've had several movies on this list that I've called big surprises, and this was another big surprise. I wasn't sure what to expect here. I only knew that it was a take on the giallo film, and it is indeed a riff on giallo as a genre. It takes place in the late 70s Parisian gay porn scene. Which, again, like several boxes checked for me. And in addition to that, it is, in my opinion, a pitch-perfect utilization of the giallo scheme. Like, there's a lot of really fun takes on the giallo subgenre that are modern. You got Barbarian Sound Studio. You've got the Onetti brothers' work, like Francesca and Abracadabra. You've got, what was the one I just watched? I just watched one. Holy shit. Crystallize. Crystallize. Currently available on Arrow. Yeah, there's a bunch of them. This is the one that I feel best utilizes it. It's not a perfect, like, one-to-one, like, you're going to believe it's made in the 70s, but it does get the tone right. It gets the kind of psycho-melodrama in there just right. A lot of great kills, very mean-spirited, exploitative, that sort of thing, and very character-centric. It's a film that if you don't know what a giallo is, you'll still appreciate immensely, whereas I feel like a lot of these other films, you kind of have to know the genre already. This one works by itself and is absolutely brilliant. Jan Gonzalez, it doesn't really matter. The director did a phenomenal job with this. I love it so much. I recommend it to everyone I talk to. So it's a great place to end this list. Watch Knife and Heart if you haven't already. I feel like all my fellow like major horror nerds have already watched it, but if you haven't by any chance, check that out. So yeah, that's just my list of recommendations. I was going through the list. Actually, I have it right here. I was going through the list of all the movies on Shudder right now, and there's a lot of great stuff that I enjoy. But there's also a lot of stuff that I haven't seen before. So you have like classics. You have The Hills Have Eyes. You have Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. You have Hellraiser and Hellraiser 2. You have Turbo Kid. You have Heathers. Hell Comes to Frogtown. Patrick. Turkey Shoot. All these movies that, most people have seen who are, fans of horror. All these movies that I've seen and enjoyed, a lot of them very famous. But then you have like The Deeper You Dig, which just came out, or is coming out through Arrow. You have Starfish. You got Fade to Black, which is also coming to Vinegar Syndrome. So if you're not sure about that purchase, that's another one that you can watch first on Shudder. Satan's Slave, which I think you also have the remake of Satan's Slave somewhere on here. You've got Satanic Panic, which is pretty fine. You've got Frankenstein from the director of Candyman. That's pretty dope as hell. You've got Jessica Forever. You've got The Golden Glove. Don't know what that is. Dogs Don't Wear Pants. I've heard good things about that one. So many movies. Demon, I've heard great things about. The Taking of Deborah Logan. Body Bags is a fucking classic. Bunch of stuff. Street Trash is so good. There's a ton of movies on here. Again, over 300. so many movies to watch. If you have some favorites that I didn't mention that you think people should watch because maybe they haven't, or you just love shouting from the rooftop how much you love that movie, let me know in the comments below. Just let people know, let everybody know in the comments below. And if you're watching this and you want more recommendations, maybe you've seen all the ones I've mentioned, or you just want more, you just need more, check out the comments. I'm sure people will be giving their 2 cents, and I cannot wait to pick up that change. I don't know what that means. All right, so anyway, thank you so much for watching. Check out the Patreon, the social medias, all that shit. And until next time, go watch a movie.